I'm very much pleased, we are very much pleased that you finally made it. My heart was already jumping a little bit. And as a hacker, like Hannes Gassert presented it to us, you of course have your own machine and you have your own like slide program. So therefore we had to make this little change phase. So this is Rufus Pollock. He's founder and director of the Open Knowledge Foundation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Okay. So I'm going to talk, I don't know, I think a slightly different title to the one maybe in the program, but Open Data, where we are and where we're going. And for those of you who don't know about the Open Knowledge Foundation, it's a not-for-profit. It's founded in 2004, community-based, and we build technology and community to develop, disseminate, and use open knowledge, data and content, sonnets to statistics, genes to geodata, the material that everyone can use, reuse, and redistribute. And in particular, I mean, we have now, having run for 8 years, we have about 30 different projects. Some of them are much larger or smaller than others. Some of the best known, CCAN, which is a data portal or data management system that many governments use, more than a dozen governments around the world, including data.gov.uk, Norway, Brazil. There's a School of Data, and a recent initiative we started, which is seeking to teach people data skills. And one of my favorites that's out there on the sonnets end of the work we do, the Public Domain Review. If you haven't read the Public Domain Review, I really recommend it. It's a beautiful curation, magazine-style curation of works which are open, which are in the domain today, which, sad to say, means that normally they're very old. And also open spending, a project that my colleague, I think Friedrich, will be talking about more later today. It's a few of the many projects we do. And the other point I should make, particularly as I'm here in Switzerland, and I'm very excited that Open Data, I think just about Opendata.ch, one of the organizers of the day today, are becoming the Swiss chapter of the Open Knowledge Foundation. We are a global community. People from around the world participate. While the organization started in the UK, we now have dozens of local groups and chapters from Brazil to India, to Switzerland, to Germany. And we also have a large number of working groups on different areas. So whatever your interest, if it's stamp collecting, if it's railway timetables, there's a community there. So, and the last thing I want to mention about the OKF, just on the point of open data, is we like this event. This year, we've run now since 2005, annually, a conference about open knowledge and open data. And this year it will be in Helsinki, in the week of the 17th of September. So if you're interested in this stuff, the core conference will be the 18th to the 21st. Come to Helsinki and get involved. So I want to start with three stories kind of about why and about where we are, perhaps illustrate where we are today. Because when we started, you know, when we talk about open data, it can seem quite abstract. And one point I like to emphasize about open information or open data is that it's a means to an end, not an end in itself. We don't sit there at night, you know, while it's really important, but we don't sit there at night counting each new triple, open data triple we've had, or each new open data CSV in our counting house, like kind of counting our gold. Ah, we've got another 100 million, you know, wow. Because it isn't just really about accumulation, right? It's about using that material to make the world better in some way. Now, the reason, though, why did we start, though? Why did I? Because I did quite a bit of activism in various areas before I got involved with the Open Knowledge Foundation. And it's one of these kind of points about levers, right? There's so many issues in the world. There's climate change, there's human rights violations, there's, do our trains run on time? You know, there are all of these things, and it's a question of where's your best lever? And the our community said, give me a lever long enough and I can move the world. And so, to kind of give it, so the kind of first story here is about needles and haystacks, and why one of the reasons I think open information is important in solving our real world problems. And in a way, though, it's a story slightly of failure. It's a story of medicine gone wrong. So it's a story, this is about, the picture behind me is of a place now renamed, but called the Redding Medical Center in Shasta County, Northern California. And basically, in 2002, a Catholic priest had heart problems, he was an ex-accountant Catholic priest. He had heart problems. He went in to have a cardiogram, was told he needed immediate surgery. Now, this is, immediate surgery. He had to come in that afternoon or the next day to have a triple heart bypass. This was rather shocking news. He went home. Fortunately, he called his friend. His friend's partner, his friend was still an accountant in Las Vegas. He'd been an accountant in Las Vegas, but he was still. And his partner was a senior nurse at the local hospital. And he said, let me talk to my partner. And the partner said, look, it's very unusual that you would need such urgent treatment. Even if it's very serious, it's not like you're going to fall over tomorrow. You've got a week, 2 weeks, a month. Come and have a second opinion. He got on a plane, went to Las Vegas, had a second opinion. Nothing wrong with his heart. Wow, he thought, okay, what's going on here? Let's get a third opinion. He got a third opinion, nothing wrong with his heart. So they went, he went home, just wanted to kind of leave it behind him, get some rest, get on with his fishing. But his friend said, no, something's up here. We should go see the hospital. So they went into the hospital. They saw the chief executive. This was a privately operated hospital, right? So it was operated by a for-profit HMO. And they had a chat, and the guy said, God, well, we'll look into this, but people make mistakes. Medicine's complicated. Look, leave it with us, we'll investigate. And they left it with them, but they got increasingly concerned that nothing was happening. And eventually, they and some, talking with some other people, they discovered there were these concerns. Eventually, they went to the FBI. And the reason they went to the FBI, by the way, is in the United States, the federal government buys healthcare provision, right, from private providers. So if these guys are conducting fraudulent operations, they are defrauding the federal government, hence it is an FBI matter. So they got the FBI involved, they got various other people involved, and I don't know, maybe in true American fashion, one of the reasons we went to the FBI is there's a whistleblower kind of reward for this. You get a reward if you discover fraud and abuse in the federal government, for the federal government. And over several years, there was an investigation. It turned out that hundreds, probably thousands of needless operations, heart operations, had been conducted on healthy patients. People had died, people were in immense pain, some people their chest had never knitted back together, and the other, and so this was a serious matter. I mean, sad to say, the government eventually settled. The doctors were struck off the medical register, but they were never prosecuted, actually. They never went to jail. And they kept, normally, their very nice houses. They'd become very wealthy, these doctors, and the medical chain, Tenet Healthcare, eventually was taken over, but had been extremely profitable. And this hospital in particular had been extremely profitable, because heart operations are extremely costly. They're very lucrative to do on Medicare. And the thing was, they were also very popular because they had one of the best mortality rates for heart operations, because you operate on healthy people, you have good mortality rates. So the point that I'm saying about the story is, the real point was, could this have been found earlier? This has been going on since 1992, over a period of about a decade. And as I said, there were anomalies about this hospital. People in the community knew stuff was up. They would say, hey, get a flat tire in front of Reading Medical Center, and you'll end up with a triple heart bypass. There was this kind of folk wisdom that stuff was not right, that there were too many heart operations going on. But at the same time, there were these great stats. It employed a lot of people in quite a small local community. But the thing was, if you looked at the data, there were two red flags that you should have seen. So one was their mortality rate was excellent. It was one of the best in the country. Now, that in itself is not a red flag. The second item was they conducted more heart operations per capita than any other region of the United States. Now, those two things should not go together, because the more operations you're doing, the more you'll probably operate, you should be getting kind of diminishing returns normally, rather than, better. So someone who'd been looking at the data, something that was just kind of intuition of a few doctors in the community who were, primary care doctors who recommended people, would have turned into something that was worth investigating. So the kind of story I got from this, and the sad thing was no one did spot it. And also the data was not, there was data being collected, but it was not made available. But if all of this data had been out there, if it had been open data, and enough people looked at it, and this is kind of story which comes from open source. Well, to many eyes, all bugs are shallow. And I think for data and open data, it's to many eyes, all anomalies are obvious. Now, just like to many eyes, all bugs are shallow, it's not strictly true. But it's basically true. The more eyes, the more people we have looking at this kind of material, the more likely it is that we spot those kind of anomalies, and we're able to do something about it. And just remember, most of those anomalies Probably maybe if we're lucky, 5 and 100 turn out to be, 95 out of 100 are all fine. They're just a genuine anomaly that's for good reason. But 5 are going to be something that's wrong, that we can do something about. And another example of why this is difficult at the moment, so it's like, well, this is such a good idea, what's going on? So here's another example of a less immediately problematic topic, which is traffic data, obviously, which is an attempt, traffic, at least in the UK, on the M25, is estimated 25% of the time spent on this massive road is wasted, people sitting in traffic jams. I was interested in getting data on this. I wrote to the government. They had it on a website. They had it up online in a bzip file. Could I have it? It wasn't even being sold for money, but it was password protected. And eventually I was basically told, no, you must comply with all these commissions, you mustn't use it for commercial gain, you mustn't, I love this one, the data will not be used to contradict or challenge any research project, works or statement made by the government. That was one of the conditions for getting this data, right? So, open data. So why does this matter? It goes back even to hospitals. Often we have so much of this data actually being collected already by the governments or others, but we don't have access to it. It's not possible. I spent 4 months emailing regarding that traffic data before I even got the answer that I wasn't allowed it. Most people are not going to bother doing that, even if they're building a business or they're trying to investigate a problem. Either way, they won't do that. So it's really important that we have open data. That's, as in the open definition, freedom for anyone to use, reuse, and redistribute. And anyone means anyone. It doesn't mean no restriction on commercial use, and open, and sadly, does not mean Creative Commons. Most Creative Commons licenses, or at least 50%, are not open as per the open definition. And the other thing is machine access. So the other thing that is holding us up a lot of the time here is we get data. This is wonderful. This is ASCII data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States. That is very human readable, but it is not very machine readable. You have to write parsers like this. And in fact, I've even given up trying to parse the headings, because that's almost AI-level intelligence to work out what the headings are of that ASCII text. And then we can get graphs like this. So it's about insight. We're trying to get this material to make it easier and faster for us to see things, to understand things, to analyze things. So as you can see, this is the story of recessions and unemployment in the US since the war. So machine readable. The other aspect of open data is legally open and it's technologically open. Machine readable bulk data. PDFs are not enough. APIs are not enough. And we've been building tools over the last several years to help with that. I'm going to kind of zoom through this set of tools that we have been building in this community. I think that's one of the things since the beginning is we've been getting open data and we've been building stuff. So where are we today? So I think one thing is that we're gradually, those stories of like the traffic data are getting a little bit less. We've seen huge numbers of data catalogs from governments around the world. Sad to say, I would point out, that when you actually look at many of these catalogs, not all the data in them is actually open. New Zealand was a good example where it turned out like 80% of their open government data, I think, turned out to actually not be licensed openly because it was under Creative Commons non-commercial. So we're kind of seeing progress, and we're seeing progress on the tools, the things I skipped through just here. We are starting to see some of that progress, but where next? So one aspect, I think, is that we've got to, not that we're doing it too much, I would include us about it. It's like, for a long time, we haven't had any material to work with. We've, at least for mine, have been a bit obsessed on just having any resource. You could think of all of these applications that you might want to build, from, was my bus on time? Was my train on time? To, how good is my hospital? How many people got, MRSA last year? To, where does the money go? There are all these applications we wanted to build since the OKF started, and most of the time we couldn't because there was no data, or you had to pay a bunch of money, or you had to negotiate, or what application does not need a map or geodata, particularly ones that you can modify? But we're now at this point where we're starting to get that, and we should be focusing on solving problems and building applications to solve those problems. It's not about accumulating more and more data. We have some applications, we've seen some amazing ones getting built, but there is a lot more that we can be doing in that area, and particularly in really engaging from this community, from the tech community, into communities which are not technical, that are not, they're journalists or they're civic society organizations who have problems and could tell us what they would need. And the other point here is toy versus core data sets. Sad to say, while we are seeing progress, far too often what we're getting from government is toy, or from others, is toy versus core data sets. We get the location of park benches, we can build a great iPhone app of where the location of park benches are in your local park. But we're not seeing the national map. And I'd love to see this for Switzerland. I don't think it's filled in, but census.open-government-data.org, we're looking at 10 core data sets. Not saying, not counting, I've released 300 data sets on an Open Government Data website. No, what core data sets have you released? The national map, postcodes, the company register. So particularly for Switzerland, please go to census.open-government-data.org or in fact to submit open-government-data.org/census/submit and fill one in for Switzerland if you know it. And with machine readable, we've only just begun. So much data. I can't tell you the number of data sets. The other day, I downloaded from the London Data Store a great data set which was about basically passenger use on the underground, which, if you've traveled on the underground in London, can be quite a relevant matter. They're quite busy things, right? Okay, the date, I just won't go into the details, but the date is in a completely machine unparsable form. That data set without some processing is just not graphable or usable immediately. And just every data set is like that at the moment, unfortunately. If you're lucky enough to get it in CSV rather than PDF. And the other aspect, education and skills, I think this is the other area where we're trying to build a movement. Which is what I think we are trying to build, a movement of people. We need to reach out and train up and engage a much wider audience. School children, students, teachers, journalists, not just the geeks or not just those excited about data from a policy side. And the other thing is small data versus big data. I am a big believer in small data. It's not just about size, remember. It's about small pieces loosely joined, not one ring to rule them all. So let's see more small data. Often governments are kind of getting into this discussion of, do we need this? Most of the time when I look at governments or others, they've got small data sets in the order of 10 to 100,000 or even 1 million rows, stuff that you can fit on your laptop. That's small data for me. Let's not get obsessed about big iron and big data and, we need to be real men with real data. It's not what we need, and I'm very near the end, I know that. And the other aspect I think we really want to reflect on, if we are going to achieve something, is keeping it simple. I particularly say this to my colleagues in the semantic web community. Let's keep it simple. We really need to make what we're doing easy. So one of our problems is just the incompatibility of data a lot of the time. We're talking about formats. We need to give people a schema that's 10 headings of CSV, not a full-on ontology, unfortunately, because people are just not ready for that. So to sum up, open data is a platform, not a commodity. We need to keep telling this to people. The value, commercial and social, will come, and it will come from building on it, not trying to sell it. Looking at OpenStreetMap, look at the companies now paying real money in the OpenStreetMap community. Foursquare just moved $250,000 deal. It is happening. So let's build on it, not sell it. Increasing amounts of data. I think that's where we are today, is we're starting to see the data deluge, at least of open data. We're now in a place we're starting to get a lot. But let's be problem and application driven. Let's not sit in our counting house, counting our triples or counting our CSVs. I include myself in this. Let's not be data and technology driven. Let's be problem and application driven. And let's go and find the people who have got those. Let's listen to them. Where are the NGOs today who probably know nothing about data? Are they in this room? They probably aren't. How do we get them here? Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Rufus, for this visionary and really I call it spiritual or with spirit talk. So, before we all go for lunch, one question to Rufus.
Wow.
Someone? Okay.
There's one person at the back.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think everyone wants lunch, I can imagine. It's been a long morning.
Hi. My question is a little bit what Martin said before as well. Is it your idea that the APIs or the machine-readable access should be provided by the governments, or should there be some intermediaries or something?
Okay, I think there are two aspects to it. I think one is that I think the government's got to provide bulk data. So what worries me sometimes about the government doing APIs is that will substitute for doing bulk data release. The challenge is that APIs do make it easier to build, for people to build rapidly. So my instinct is that I prefer government not to build too many APIs, because it will substitute both for private companies. You're substituting for people who could either do for-profit or non-profit businesses. The challenge is that we have a technological gap. Because the problem at the moment then is, if you've got someone who's a third party, the government needs to be making available, let's say, whether it's not even real-time data, but data that's updated weekly, sometimes daily or monthly. Whoever's building that API needs that data very quickly and efficiently. And there's this kind of gap. So I think at the moment, I'm a bit torn. I think that the government should choose some experimental APIs for some core data sets, but I just don't think it's what the government needs to do, because it's a service provision. It's something that's going to cost money. The other point, remember, the argument for open data is it doesn't cost you very much. Governments releasing open data is not a costly operation. It's the cost of buying space on S3 or Google Storage or their own hardware to host the data. Whereas running services is expensive. Running APIs 24/7 with the capacity to take real load is expensive. And that's going to change the face of this argument. So my instinct is to say governments need to be enabling much more other people to build APIs. And just one example, the UK government did a kind of an API in their own app for the police data they released, which was great. Their website got huge numbers of hits, which any website that had done it, but no newspaper really picked it up in the same way. No, I remember talking with someone in the Guardian, they were like, well, we didn't build anything because the government had done it. So it's kind of, the problem also is for government though, the problem for government is we need to then give them something to measure, because government's desperate to measure stuff. And APIs or their own apps will get lots of hits, and they'll be going, look, 1 million people use this. Whereas at the moment, they can't see 1 million people using a website that isn't theirs. So the other thing I think we then also need to do is be gathering stats a bit better as a community to say, look, government, look how successful this was. This website here got 1 million hits. This newspaper saw 5 million page views for this thing.
Thank you so much, Rufus.